So if I could just interrupt for 1 minute, ladies. So I just want to do an official welcome, right? Welcome, right? So it's really great. And we've got Jennifer online, and we've got, Jerry Sheridan is going to join us again here. He'll be back. And we have a couple who aren't yet here, but I'm sure they'll show soon enough. I had rather hoped and see if we get more people online or not. So we'll see as time goes on if we get other joiners or not. This is our first attempt at a hybrid meeting. We do have some people that I know said, would love to come, but no situation. So fully understood. So I really do appreciate you all coming today. This is really nice to meet a new member, some of us older, longer members, and a newer member. I didn't really prepare any big announcements. Unfortunately, I think I put some things in the email. Hopefully you received my email earlier maybe just 2 days ago, that the restrictions are getting tighter and tighter. So certainly any of these lunches, we actually thought it would be easier to do things in restaurants because that's permitted and we can do that. And now, of course, that's not at all.
So ladies' night out is cancelled.
Ladies' night out is cancelled. We have we had a luncheon for a cause, a really sort of a fundraising luncheon. That's also cancelled, unfortunately, since restaurants are closed. So that's it. We have a book club that was planned in a cafe restaurant last week on Tuesday. Kate has moved that to Zoom. So I know the reading group had been meeting via Zoom for months now. So it certainly is possible to have a nice discussion about a book by Zoom. So hopefully we'll see how the daytime book club does as well. So yes, we're doing what we can. We still have Halloween on the calendar. It's an outdoor event. We have a plan. It's not a party. We used to have Halloween parties inside. All we're doing is handing out little sachets of candy, and we have some prizes also for the kids if they guess the weight of the pumpkin. But everything will be outside, rain or shine. If anybody really likes decorating for Halloween, we'd still love some trunks. And of course, we'll just have to see. The security committee is meeting again on Friday. And if it's not allowed, it won't be allowed. We'll have to cancel it. But we hope it is. And we hope we can at least do that. And then we'll just see in the November timeframe, how things progress. We had hoped to have some open days. And this is a new thing since our last meeting. So I know some of you were at our last meeting. Obviously, you weren't. But we normally have a really nice Thanksgiving dinner here in the house, buffet style, family style. Everybody brings something. The club gets the turkeys, but obviously we just can't manage that this year. But we are hoping still to sell the house. We're still waiting to sign the compromis de vente. So waiting on information from the commune, typical stuff. It should be coming. So we're not worried about it yet, right? But it is taking a bit longer than we thought. So as those things sort of progress and we see when is our final date to move out and things like that, we'll be communicating more information. If there are things that we can do in the house, having people in, maybe also selling some things, we'll be providing some information. Hi there, Cecilia. Providing some information about that by now it'll be email. And what we might try to do is also throw a few Zooms on for information, just communication and information sharing. So that's just a quick, maybe after I'm going to turn it over because I think from a timing perspective, I don't have a watch anymore, but hopefully about 10:15, Peter told me before. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sheridan. Is he there? I don't see him.
I'll give a quick little intro for those people.
Yeah. Let's just make sure he's there.
I'm here.
He's not there yet.
There he is. Okay, we hear you. There he is. Okay, great. So I'm going to first, I guess, turn it over to Anna, who is going to introduce Jerry for us, although some of us know Jerry for a while, and we'll hear what he has to say. Please.
Welcome, Mr. Sheridan. This is Dr. Jerome Sheridan. He's the director of the American University's Brussels Center and a professor of international relations at American University. Outside of academia, Dr. Sheridan is the president of the American Overseas Memorial Day Association in Belgium. And he's going to share some information on that organization's work here, specifically in light of the upcoming Veterans Day, also known as Armistice Day, also known as Remembrance Day here in Europe on November 11th. Dr. Sheridan and his family live in Tervuren, which is not very far from here, Hannah. And he's a dual national, trilingual, and I thought this was cool, an avid amateur mountaineer, which I'd love to hear more about. We are very grateful for his time here today and for his continued interest in our club. Thank you, Dr. Sheridan.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and also thank you as well for having me speak to you today. I'm sorry that I cannot be there in person, but circumstances of the last week basically preclude that from happening. We had a little COVID scare in the office, and so I thought it was safe for my family and everybody to do it this way. So it's a little bit unusual for me to try to do a presentation in this format, but we're going to do our best. I'm going to put up the screen share to see if you can see my presentation, which... Let's see if that works. Okay, can everybody see my presentation? Is it visible to you? I'm not hearing anything on the other side.
I can see it.
You
I
can see it?
it.
Okay, so I'm going to assume then that it's visible for the club as a whole. So what I've been asked to speak about today is basically the association that I lead, the American Overseas Memorial Day Association, Belgium, and our mission of perpetuating remembrance. And before I get into the organization per se, I'd like to take you on a small walk down memory lane. And it's not necessarily in our memories, but it's certainly in the collective memory of Belgium. You know, there was a time in historical terms not all that long ago when Belgium didn't look like it looked today. In World War I, Belgium was overrun by a much larger neighbor. You know, thousands of homes were destroyed. Cities like Leuven were destroyed. The country faced widespread starvation. The warfare of that conflict was reached unimaginably high levels of casualties through industrial scale warfare and gas, you know, use of poison gas and things of this nature. And 25 years later, the same thing happened, even worse. This time there were unspeakable human rights atrocities carried out throughout the continent. And you know, the memory of this war has seared very, very deeply into the psyche of Europe today, I would argue. What brought this war to an end? Ultimately, the United States, as well as other allies, came to Europe to basically free an enslaved continent. Nearly 5 million Americans served in World War I, 16 million Americans served in World War II, and thousands of them never returned home. About 120,000 American servicemen died in World War I, 405,000 died in World War II, and over 14,000 of these American servicemen are buried in Belgium today. Among them were people like Sergeant Stan Beatty. Stan was from Troy, New York. He was the president of his class, the quarterback of the football team, really, really popular guy back home who volunteered for the New York National Guard and was killed fighting at the Mount Kemmel near Ypres in the First World War. Eric Fisher Wood, he was a graduate of the Valley Forge Military Academy. His father had actually founded the American Legion. He was cut off from his unit in the Second World War and basically fought a 6-week one-man war during the Battle of the Bulge in the woods around Mayroda in Belgium. And when they found his body afterwards, he was surrounded by 7 dead Germans. So we know he won his last battle in there. People like George Davis, an African-American from Tuskegee, Alabama. He and 10 of his colleagues were captured by the Nazis near the village of Wereth, and they were tortured to death in the most cruel and inhumane way that you can possibly imagine. He's buried at the Honor Chapelle Cemetery. Jerry Sorensen from Pocatello, Idaho, was an airman who was shot down over Belgium and ended up joining the Belgian resistance, fought out World War II from the rest of the war with the Belgian resistance, was killed while fighting the resistance, and is buried in Gonshorn next to his adopted Belgian brother. My point is that each of these servicemen have a story, and that's something I'll come back to in a little while, but they were real individuals from the United States who paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live in freedom today. And that's why the mission of the association, the American Overseas Memorial Day Association Belgium, is perpetuate the remembrance of these people who fight and died for the freedom of Belgium and for the freedom that we enjoy today. I know 75 years ago may sound like a long time. It certainly sounds like a long time to my students who I teach, but in reality, it's nothing by historical standards. And if you think that the peace and freedom we enjoy today is something that can be taken for granted, it can be lost. Democracy is under threat around the world, and as the events in 2014 demonstrate, it's something that countries do aggress other countries to this day. So the core of our mission is to remind people of this, that freedom is something that has to be fought for and remembered on a day-to-day basis. And we do this by remembering America's war dead. Basically, the AOMDA is a public-private partnership. It consists of private citizens in the AOMDA Foundation, the organization that I lead, together with the United States Embassy to the Kingdom of Belgium and the American Battle Monuments Commission, and we enjoy considerable support from the American and Belgian Armed Forces in our mission. And if I were to define what we do, I use 3 words: remember, preserve, and perpetuate. We remember by organizing Memorial Day ceremonies at the 3 American cemeteries in Belgium and at the graves of the 15 Americans that are buried outside of those cemeteries in what we call isolated graves. We work to preserve these isolated graves as well as monuments that are not under the control of the American Battle Monuments Commission. I'd like to stress that the 3 American cemeteries are maintained by the American Battle Monuments Commission, and they do a very fantastic job in keeping them as fitting tributes to America's war dead, as are 2 American monuments that were erected by the United States government. But there's many, many monuments in Belgium that are not preserved by the ABMC, and as well as these isolated graves, these Americans that are buried outside of the cemeteries. So basically, when it comes to this task, our organization steps in where the ABMC is not present, basically, to ensure that these monuments and these graves remain intact. We also perpetuate. We try to make Memorial Day a 365-day-a-year activity through our youth outreach programs and through our so-called Sentinels of Memory, which I'll come on to in a couple of moments. But our association actually began in 1923. We are nearly 100 years old at this point, and the very first Memorial Day in Belgium was held on the 3rd of June, 1923 at the Flanders Field American Cemetery near Waregem. It's not all that far from Ghent. This cemetery, there were 4 American divisions that fought in Belgium during World War I. At the very, very end of the war, they were there in September of 1918 and at the time of the armistice. And there's 368 Americans buried in this particular cemetery. And this is a photograph from the very, very first Memorial Day ceremony that was held there. In 1927, that cemetery received a very special visit when Lindbergh flew over during his transatlantic flight and dropped flowers on the graves of the cemetery. We have traditionally enjoyed very strong support from the communities where the cemeteries are located. Here's a postcard from the pre-war period of the Flanders Field American Cemetery in Waregem that was published. And even during the Second World War, Memorial Day continued, believe it or not. Now, it was not allowed by the Nazis, but a group of Belgians clandestinely conducted Memorial Day ceremonies at the Flanders Field American Cemetery. And here's a photograph of them doing it. I might add, at extreme personal risk to themselves, because had the Nazis caught them, they certainly would have been thrown in jail and worse, perhaps, who knows. And of course, after the Second World War, the war dead of America and Belgium grew dramatically. This was the Ardennes Cemetery in 1946, and this was the Henri Chapelle Cemetery from the same year. At that moment in time, there were some 16,000 Americans who were buried at that particular cemetery. Now, families after the war had the choice of whether or not to have their son repatriated, the bodies brought back to the States, or to be buried forever in one of these permanent American cemeteries. In practice, about 70% of the families chose for repatriation of the remains. So you can see here, this is one of the coffins leaving from Antwerp. And those that stay behind, therefore, represent about 30% of the casualties that were once buried in those cemeteries. The first Memorial Day ceremony at the Ardennes Cemetery came back in 1948. And here's a picture of what the ceremony looks like today. The same goes to the Henri Chapelle Cemetery, where we hold ceremonies each year. You can see the plane coming from the flyover in the background right there. And the Flanders Field ceremony continues. At this ceremony, if you've not had the chance to attend, you'll find that the school children of Waregem sing the American National Anthem. They learn the words to the American National Anthem, and they've been carrying on this tradition since 1923. And then, as I said before, we hold ceremonies as well at the graves of the Americans who are buried outside of these cemeteries. There are 15 of them buried in so-called isolated graves. They're there for a number of reasons. In the case of Jerry Sorensen, he became very, very close to a Belgian family, and was when he was killed with his Belgian quote unquote brother after the war, his family, Sorensen's family, requested that he remain there. Same goes for Joe Farina, the variety of reasons that they are located in these isolated graves. Now, this tradition continued from 1923, all the way to 2020. COVID threatened to cancel Memorial Day in Belgium, and in fact, the large public ceremonies were canceled. But we just couldn't let Memorial Day cancel Memorial Day ceremonies this year. So we took our ceremonies online and held an actual online ceremony called, and it's still there on memorialdayonline.com. If you did not have the chance to participate or see it, as I said, go to that website and have a look at it. It's about 30 minutes long. We even had the Belgian Prime Minister give us a small speech there. The Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission. We're actually quite proud of it. And we're prepared, of course, in 2021, if this craziness continues, to continue online. But we are hoping, of course, that we'll be able to conduct actual Memorial Day ceremonies at the cemeteries this year. But, we rose to the challenge. We're quite proud of the fact that we continued on our tradition since 1923. But again, that's not the only thing we do. We try to make Memorial Day a 365-day-a-year activity. And one of our flagship programs is the Price of Freedom Award. And this is a youth outreach program where youths, it's modeled after the Boy Scouts, merit badge system. Youths have a certain number of requirements they have to meet. They have to study a battle. They have to visit a cemetery, talk to somebody about the experience during the war. There's a series of things. And then after this, they receive this patch. This has really taken off in certain parts of Belgium. On a non-COVID year, anywhere between 800 and 1,000 Belgian school kids earn this award each year, learning about what America did to liberate them. So it's we're trying to expand this beyond these students now who earn the award, and with some success. And we've been talking to the American Battle Monuments Commission about perhaps taking this program to all of their cemeteries abroad. But that's not all. Our website is there to promote remembrance 365 days a year, www.aomda.org. This website is special for a couple of reasons. Not only does it talk about the ceremonies and what we do, but we've decided to try to tell the story of each of these 14,000 Americans who are buried in Belgium. So you see, you can search by a serviceman, or you could look at a cemetery. And for each serviceman that we can find the information for, we tell what we know about the individual. So we see here is Archibald Hambright, who was from Cleveland, Tennessee. We saw that he was an airman, died on a mission over Germany. We see that he earned the Purple Heart and the Air Medal. I'll come back to this slide in a sec. Well, no, let me point it out to you right now. If you look on the left-hand side below his photo, you see that there's this primary sentinel of memory. What that is all about is individuals volunteer to become the primary sentinel of memory, and that is they volunteer to, they commit to keep the memory of the serviceman alive. Oftentimes, these individuals will go out and research the biographies of the soldiers and airmen. Sometimes they will get in touch with the family back home. But these are normally individuals that live in the vicinity of the cemeteries, although not always. There's a lot of Dutch citizens that adopt graves. It was previously called grave adoption. So you hear the term. We prefer the term sentinel of memory because it emphasizes what these individuals commit to do, and that is to keep the memory of these soldiers alive. I personally am a sentinel for 2 graves as well. And it's not just limited to one individual. If you see underneath it, you see Sentinels of Memory with Dennis Berger underneath that. Any individual can volunteer to be a sentinel of memory. There's no monopoly on placing flowers on graves and for learning the stories. So people submit these stories to us, and if we have the biographical information, we put it up there. They can submit, documents about them or photographs of the soldier or airman, so we can keep the memory of the soldier or airman alive through this vehicle. We can even post videos up on the website. So it's a very, very important tool to try to preserve the memory of the Americans who died for our freedom here. And then finally, I'm going to end up talking about our largest project right now. If any of you have been to Bastogne, you've seen this memorial. This is the Martissan Memorial in Bastogne. This memorial was actually built by private Belgian citizens after the Second World War. This is not a US government monument, or at least not yet. And this monument it's massive, it's huge, it's beautiful, and it was quite an outpouring of support that the Belgians would build this. They raised private money to put this thing up. And it stands there as a fitting memory of all of the Americans who died in the Battle of the Bulge. The problem is the Belgians did not basically raise enough money or create a fund to preserve it over the years. And as you know, if you know anything about the history of World War II, the winters in Bastogne are terrible. And over the last 70 years, this monument has taken a real beating. So under the inspiration of the American ambassador to Belgium, Ambassador Gidwitz, we undertook a major fundraising effort to restore this monument. We finished phase one before the December commemorations of the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. So if you've been there recently, you've noticed that it looks a lot better than it did before. And this was important to us because, veterans came back for this 75th anniversary, and they could see, that this was a fitting tribute to them. We're now in phase two of the project, which involves some substantial renovation to ensure the long-term structural integrity of the monument. And our objective is to get it into the shape where we can turn it over to the American Battle Monuments Commission, and the American Battle Monuments Commission then will preserve it going into the future and ensure that it'll never go back to the shape that it once was. So we're very, very proud of this project. It's a very large project. It's a very expensive project. We're getting considerable support from donors, private citizens in the United States who are donating to this project. At the moment, we've raised already $1.5 million, to give you a sense of how large this project is. And we are working very, very closely with the American Battle Monuments Commission. The American Battle Monuments Commission is the agency that's actually doing the work to restore the monument. And as I said, they will be taking over the monument going into the future once we get everything, all the ducks in order to do that. Again, the AOMDA as an organization is a public-private partnership. The private part of that is the AOMDA Foundation that I lead. We're the ones that are allowed to raise money for projects like the Martyrs-Hall Memorial. And in the USA, we actually have a 501c3 corporation so that people can receive, our donations to that corporation are tax deductible. In Belgium, we have a separate organization that is a nonprofit association under Belgian law, like the American Women's Club, to which donations can also be made. If people want tax benefits, they have to donate to the American Foundation rather than the Belgian Foundation, but that's what it's all about. And then the final note before I take questions, because I think it'd be much more interesting rather than just have me drone on about remembrance and what happens in Belgium, is to have a discussion with you. The 2021 Memorial Day ceremonies right now have scheduled for the week of the 26th of May to the 2nd of June. The ceremonies, assuming COVID is under control at that moment in time, the ceremonies at the Flanders, at the Ardennes and Honor Chapelle Cemetery will take place on Saturday, the 29th of May. The ceremony at the Flanders Field American Cemetery will take place on Sunday, the 30th of May. Memorial Day itself is on the 31st, but because that's a work day in Belgium, we hold the Memorial Day ceremonies over the weekend. And then I have the week of in there because we also do these ceremonies at the isolated graves, as well as a ceremony at Bastogne from the 26th of May to the 2nd of June from the week around Memorial Day. So thank you for allowing me to briefly kind of go over everything we did. I wanted to paint a broad brush to allow time for questions, and I'll go into any of these subjects in more detail with you if you'd like, or we can talk about the war, we can talk about anything you'd like to talk about. So on that note, I will stop the screen sharing and we can have a conversation.
Thank you, Jerry. That's really, really great. So thank you very much for sharing that. I do want to open it up to questions. I always have some for Jerry, but anybody else for the moment? Yes, Linda,
I
please.
thought there were 3 ceremonies. You only mentioned 2. For Memorial Day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wasn't
Jerry,
there.
did you hear that?
Yeah, so she said I only mentioned 2 for Memorial Day. Was that the question?
I understood only 2.
Okay, then I think I
Yes,
spoke.
that is the question.
I think I spoke much too rapidly. I have a tendency to do that with my students. There are actually, let me think about this, 21 Memorial Day ceremonies that take place in Belgium. That's why I had the range of the dates there. So the three American cemeteries, Ardennes, Henri Chapelle, and Flanders Field, those three ceremonies take place during the weekend of Memorial Day. So at the two World War II cemeteries, Ardennes and Henri Chapelle, those take place on Saturday, the 29th of May. And then on Sunday, the 30th of May this year, will be the ceremony at the Flanders Field Cemetery, the longest standing ceremony that we have, where the children sing and everything else. But we also conduct ceremonies at each of the isolated graves where the Americans are buried outside of these cemeteries. And we also conduct ceremonies at the Oudenarde American Monument, the Kemmel American Monument, and then the city of Bastogne organizes a Memorial Day ceremony at the Martissan Memorial that we talked about, that we don't organize that, the city does it, but we cooperate with them and they put our name on it. So those are the three ceremonies we do, or the ceremonies we do.
Thank you.
What about Armistice Day, Jerry? Last year, I know I have a son who's a Cub Scout, and we participated in an Armistice Day ceremony in Oregon.
Absolutely. Let me talk about that. The American Overseas Memorial Day Association does war dead. So the remit of our organization is only people who have died in the war. So we do not, as an organization, do Veterans Day ceremonies because those are veterans. However, at the Flanders Field Cemetery, as you talk about each year, the Scouts actually organize a ceremony there in honor of the veterans. And at the other cemeteries as well, there are smaller ceremonies that take place. Obviously, this year, none of that is going to happen for obvious reasons. But we will be, there will no doubt be wreaths presented at these things. Of course, we always attend these things, we support these things, we publicize these ceremonies because it is important to remember the veterans, but it's out of the scope of what our organization actually does.
Thank you for that. Any other questions?
I have more of a comment.
Sure.
COVID prevented us from being actively at the Memorial Day celebrations as the American Women's Club. But the minute things opened up afterwards, my husband and I went, and the Martissan, I recommend, if you haven't been to it, it is so impressive to go and visit. I was continually blown away, and Bastogne too. I'm a big fan of getting to see that sort of closer in Belgium, since we're kind of prevented from going outside of Belgium. My hat's off to the preservation project, Dr. Sheridan, because that was beautiful. I'm looking at the picture that you posted, doesn't do it justice, because I was amazed at how gorgeous it was when we went to go see it. So well done there, and we hope that we get to participate in person next year.
That's great, and yeah, the photograph you saw was the before picture. that's what we took on, and as you said, you've seen the after, and it's not even the after yet because we still have a lot of work, structural work that needs to take place there. And as I said, ABMC will be taking it over. All things being equal, in the not too distant future, which will even improve it more after that. But yeah, Martissan's quite an impressive thing. And again, I probably spoke too quickly during my presentation, but we did do the Memorial Day online, and it's still there. So if you didn't get the chance to see it, please go to that website and have a look at it. I think you'll be very, very impressed with what we were able to do. It was actually a live ceremony. The ambassador opened it up, and we went from various spots. Parts of it were pre-taped, of course, but we went to the Prime Minister's office, went to Washington, D.C. We were quite happy with how we managed to pull that one off.
Yeah, it was very well done, and we even were able to share the link with family in the US so that we all watched at the same time, which was really fun.
Oh, thank you. That's great. I'm really happy to hear that.
Great. So, Jerry, will you hear your presentation with us, and then is it okay if we can send it out to our members or put it either on our website or Facebook or something? We'll do something with it. And I'm sure, we'll encourage people to donate. It's it's something that's really a great cause and very meaningful. It's a tough time of year for donations. We're going to ask people to donate for all kinds of stuff right now, and everybody's asking that. But this is something that's really touches a lot of American hearts, so. So if you'll give us that, we'll put it online.
I'd be happy to do that. And I would like to say, I'd like to express my own gratitude to the American Women's Club of Brussels for being such faithful supporters of our remembrance activities over the years. You know, each year, pre-COVID, of course, you did this 4th of July celebration, which the proceeds were donated to our organization. You know, you're always there at the cemeteries. If I could ask you to, you know, in addition to donations, though, and things of this nature, if you could give some thought to our youth outreach programs and kind of ways that we might be able to reach more young people about the Price of Freedom Award and what happened during the war. If the next generation does not understand these lessons, as I said in my presentation, the world can definitely go the other direction. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to send the presentation to you, and I'm at your disposal. Thank you.
Well, my son actually did with the Cub Scouts the Price of Freedom Award last year. One of the packs did that, and so that is something that was quite moving, very different to do, and a lot of research or a lot of work required for it. So it was good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Jerry. I very much appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
I hope if others have questions, maybe you can jot them down. We'll be happy to forward them on to Jerry in the future. And I think that's it for today. So thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, hello, Miss Jennifer.